What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Ben and I'm glad to have you. This week we have two new music biopics coming out. We have A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic starring Timothée Chalamet, and it's directed by James Mangold. And we also have A Better Man, the Robbie Williams biopic. Yes, it's the movie with the monkey. But A Better Man is limited release right now, but it will be wide release on January 17th. And these releases made me realize the weird state that music biopics are in right now. We have two different kinds of them, at least in my opinion. We have the kind of stale, been there, done that, we know exactly what's going to happen kind with A Complete Unknown, and then we have the really weird ones like A Better Man. So I wanted to look at both kinds of films and kind of figure out how we got to this place to begin with. So let's start off with the stale ones. Let's start off with A Complete Unknown. Now, I have not seen this movie. I am filming this before the movie even comes out. However, just by watching the trailer, I know exactly what this movie is going to be because I've seen this exact movie with this exact same storyline so many times. And most reviews I read about this film, even the positive ones, detail this exact problem with this film. We've seen this storyline before. I'm sure it's a fine movie. I'm sure the acting is fine. I'm a big fan of the director. He gave us Ford vs. Ferrari, which I think is one of the best films of the past decade. But even though the film still might be good, even though it still might be enjoyable, I still feel like I've seen this exact movie several times before. Music biopics kind of peaked in my opinion with Ray and Walk the Line back in 2004, 2005, I think, and Walk the Line was actually directed by James Mangold. But ever since then, I feel like we've just been getting this same exact movie, hitting the exact same beats over and over again. Just in the past few years, we've had a lot of music biopics. We had Get On Up, which was about James Brown. We had One Love, the Bob Marley movie. I Want to Dance with Somebody, the Whitney Houston movie. Straight Outta Compton, the NWA movie. The Elvis biopic starring Austin Butler. Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen biopic. The Dirt, the Motley Crue biopic. I'm not mentioning Rocket Man right now just because I think that movie is a little bit different than the rest of these films, but I will be talking about it later. And I'm not saying all these movies are bad. I'm not saying all these movies are great either. There are some that are great, there are some that are bad, but even if, whether they're good or bad, they all just mostly feel the same because they're all so similar to one another. And I feel like I've seen this movie already, even though it's about a different artist. They usually start off with the characters being poor and they're never going to make it and people are doubting them. And then there's just one scene where they sing or perform and just blow everyone out of the water and blow everyone away. And they're like, oh, they actually have something. And one person kind of sees their potential. Then eventually there's a little montage part where they just keep getting bigger and bigger. They're usually on tour during this part and like one of their biggest hits plays underneath the scene. And if the movie is really bad, they'll have like a graphic of one of their song on a Billboard chart and then it races up and it climbs the chart to #1. That's a bad version, in my opinion. There's usually a scene where the artist hears something that is actually the origin of their most famous song, and they're like, wait a minute, say that again? And then boom, it cuts to them singing their most famous song. This happens quite a bit in music biopics. The one I hate the most, though, is the We Will Rock You scene from Bohemian Rhapsody. God, I hate that scene. You see Brian May just tapping on the stage the beat of We Will Rock You while the entire band is fighting, and he's like, wait a minute, everyone come up on stage. And then all these professional musicians come up and are like, what do you mean we have to stomp, stomp, clap? Stomp, stomp, clap. What do you mean by that, Brian? Like, they're professional musicians. They should generally understand what this is. There might be a scene or scenes of these artists meeting up with other famous musicians and it kind of feels like an Avengers movie. I'm still waiting for the day where they try to make a cinematic universe with musicians, right? Like we'll have Timothee Chalamet's Bob Dylan meet up with Rami Malek's Freddie Mercury, and then Taron Egerton will come in and an end credit scene. He's like, we're forming a team. And then there's a scene where all the artists just get really sad. Usually it's in the rain, calling out to a loved one because even though they have all this fame, they still just crave love, and love from strangers is just not enough because we gotta know these are tortured artists underneath, even though they have a ton of money. And then they just kind of get over it, or they just get the band back together and they realize that they all love each other, or they realize that they are enough, or maybe they find true love, sometimes very fast. Maybe with a waiter they met one time in the film and then never met again till the end of the film. If you can't tell, I really hated Bohemian Rhapsody. And that's every single one of these movies. Now, you can make this same argument for any kind of movie in general, right? Superhero, rom-com, action, they all have similar conventions, they all have similar beats. But the settings of these genres can drastically change. The characters' overall goal of these movies can be different, where music biopics are all kind of the same thing, even though they're about a different character and they need different things internally. They're all set in the music industry. It's always about their rise to become a big musician and how that's not enough. They're all around the same time period as well, even though Bob Dylan is a very different character from Johnny Cash or Elton John or NWA. It's roughly going to be the same story. There's not much else you can do due to the nature of these people's lives. And in my opinion, that's why it feels kind of stale. I'm being fed the same movie over and over again. And once again, I am not saying that these movies are bad. They can be fine. They can be enjoyable. It's just the same. It's like, yeah, I love In-N-Out, but do I want the same burger all the time? Yeah, I would. That's a bad example. I shouldn't have said that. But we keep making these movies, even though they're the same kind of movie, because people like them inherently. They like hearing good music that they love play throughout the entire thing. They like learning just a little bit more about the artist that they like. But they're the same fucking movie. And they either do that, the very conventional kind of stale thing, or most recently, they've been taking some wild swings and doing really weird shit like A Better Man. Now, I'm not gonna act like I know who Robbie Williams is. I'm a dumb American. We think the whole world revolves around us. We can't figure out universal health care. We can't figure out gun control. We will never change. And so I will not be researching who Robbie Williams is. I've heard he's really big in the UK, and that's probably who this movie is mainly for. And I know I have some viewers in the UK, so please comment and feel free to enlighten me about Robbie Williams, because up until this trailer, this movie, I've never heard of this guy. And I think I speak for all of us stupid Americans here when we first saw this trailer, when we first heard of this movie and this dude, we definitely misheard it and thought it was a movie about Robin Williams. And if anything, that makes more sense. Robin Williams was a very hairy dude. He was very funny. He acted like a monkey, and he was friends with a monkey as well. Like, this makes more sense to have Robin Williams be played by a monkey in a movie about him. And with A Better Man, even though it's going to be the same movie as all of these other music biopics, at least it's going to be weird and different. Based off the trailer and the musical sequences that we've seen, they seem to be leaning more into just making it kind of more like a musical, kind of similar to how Rocket Man did it for Elton John. Rocket Man was a music biopic, but it was also a musical, allowing it to be a tad different, where they had really big set pieces and really big musical numbers throughout, making it just a tad different from the kind of stale ones that we're used to. But the whole monkey thing, even though it's weird and it's different and it makes the film a little more unique, it just makes me wonder why they're doing it. I watched the featurette about this movie coming out while I was writing this, and Robbie Williams says, like, oh, I always thought of myself as a dancing monkey on stage. So, okay, fine, it makes sense. But the whole movie? I get doing this for a scene or a musical number where he just turns into a monkey for one scene. But to hire Weta, the same company that did the Planet of the Apes movies, and blowing probably $50 million on a metaphor? Is it just to get us talking? Because it is working. Kudos to them. But everything needs a purpose. Everything needs to have a reason for why you're doing it. And it doesn't feel like this monkey thing actually serves a purpose to the story, rather than just being something that's weird and something to draw us in and talk about. It just feels a little gimmicky. And this movie could prove me wrong, right? Like, it probably could. Like, this movie could move me to tears. I could become the greatest Robbie Williams fan after this movie. It just seems like that they could potentially do this movie without having the entire monkey thing at all, and it still be a fun musical, and it still have magical music sequences in it, which makes me think that there's not a real reason to have this gimmick monkey in there. It feels similar to the most recent music biopic, Piece by Piece, the Pharrell movie, where the whole movie was just done with Legos because they wanted to, which is cool. Like, I love it when movies try something new and try to be different, and I'll always, I won't fault them for that, but you need a reason for being different rather than just doing it to be different. It kind of reminds me of like emo kids and goth kids like in middle school who go out of their way to not conform and not dress like everyone else, but then they all kind of dress the same. They're all dressed in black and they all listen to the same music. Like, sure, they're trying not to be the same as everyone else, but the whole reason is just to be different, which doesn't mean that it's better. And to give credit to A Better Man, like, everything they've released so far does make it seem fun. It does make it seem like it's going to be a good time. It looks like they're going to have some really cool musical sequences in this movie. The Regent Street clip that they just released definitely makes me want to see the film more than A Complete Unknown. And I know Bob Dylan. I like Bob Dylan. no fucking idea who Robbie Williams is, but I want to see a better man more than I want to see a complete unknown. That's how tired I am of these music biopics. And even though these music biopics are trying to branch out and do weird shit to make them more compelling, ultimately, I don't think it's going to be enough because there is an inherent problem with music biopics. And I think the reason is not every musician deserves a biopic. Just because they made some good songs doesn't mean they need an entire movie about them. Are these movies fine? Sure, but does every artist out there have a story worth telling or a story that needs telling in a 2 hour feature film? I think 8, 9 times out of 10, no, because it's the same story. In my opinion, we peaked with Ray and Walk the Line, and I feel like once that movie Walk Hard came out and just made fun of the entire genre and pointed out every single stereotype, we never really grew up from that. We started to treat these music biopics like they're IP and brands, and just like a lot of other IP, we flooded the market and we're just being served the same thing now, just like we're being served just the same old superhero movie. This is a weird comparison, but just roll with me on it just for a little bit, okay? It kind of reminds me of when Scary Movie came out. When it came out, it was fun. We all had a good time, and some of the sequels were fine. But then they ran out of movies to make fun of. They tried branching out, not doing the same old thing, making fun of some other movies, but they were doing inherently the same thing, and those weren't enough. And what happened was we ran out of scary movies to make fun of. They had to stop making these parody films. They had to put it on ice for a few years, and during that time, we let more horror movies come out. We let more scary movies come out. And now that there are more movies to make fun of, Scary Movie as a parody can come back. And I think that's what we need to do with music biopics. Let more artists come out, let them make great music, and in 10 years, we might have more stories to tell. Especially stories that deal with the digital age that music is now in, or making it as an artist in the internet age, and also with the rise of Nepo babies in the music industry. That, in my opinion, could be way more fascinating and have something to say about our current world and our current culture, which these current music biopics simply don't have. That way, we're not just releasing the same kind of movie over and over again, or we're not just doing one weird thing to make it seem kind of different, even though it's the same story. But what do you think? Do you think these movies are kind of stale, even the ones that have these weird little gimmicks? Or are you completely fine with it? Because even though they're the same stories, the movies are still mostly good, and you're still seeing a good movie, or maybe it's about an artist that you really enjoyed. Let me know in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every view, every like, every comment, and thank you so much if you already subscribe. I really enjoy the community that we're making here. If you don't subscribe and you enjoy what I said, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. I try to reach out to all my comments. I put out new videos every single week detailing the film and TV business and detailing film and TVs. So if you subscribe, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.